Hi, everyone. This is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy. Be sure to check out our blog and our newsletter and our Facebook page. And my guest today is Dawn Matera-Corsi, the author of the new book. I have it here, Redeem Your Roots. It's backwards, but you'll get the picture. So welcome, Dawn. Welcome, Dawn. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And boy, I think you're like the king of genealogy, tracing your roots back, 1,000 years?
Yeah, and that was more by luck than by design, that's for sure.
Still, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, like I said, I got lucky. So, before we talk about the book, what's your background? Where's your family from, and when did they come to America?
Yes. My family comes from the island of Ischia, which is in the Bay of Naples. Of course, most people are familiar with Capri, or Capri as the Americans pronounce it. But Ischia is right across the water, and it's actually 4 times the size of Capri. And it's called the Green Island, Isola Verde, because of how lush and rich it is, because it's volcanic. So everything grows there, and all the amazing natural thermal spas. My grandfather, who was born in 1895, came to the United States in the early 90s, and my grandmother was still back in Ischia while he came here to the States to get established. He started off as, believe it or not, he sold ice cream from a horse-drawn wagon. So maybe that's where my love of ice cream and gelato comes from. In the DNA. And then my grandmother came over later after he was established and had the house and all that. So we traveled to Italy. We've been 27 times since 2001. And so it's always wonderful to go and visit the family in Italy.
That's incredible. I'm jealous. We could kick ourselves. We keep saying, boy, we should have done this long ago. I mean, our first trip there was when we were living in England, but my son was a baby and I didn't know anything there. The only thing I knew was that my father said he had family in Torre del Greco, and we saw the sign, but we didn't go in there. We didn't do anything. And then when we did finally get to go, I actually met my dad's first cousins that I never knew existed.
Wow.
I mean, that was like the highlight of the entire trip. But I have a link to Ischia, because I don't know if do you know Villa Piramalo on the island?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of sort of like an agriturismo or something like that. Okay. But that was my grandmother's family. He was the Count of Montebello.
Wow.
My third great grandfather. And I learned this from my cousin, they had at least 7 places throughout the South.
Wow.
So in Sicily, Calabria, Naples, of course. And so I didn't get to see that, but we did see some of the other homes. So now, so you still have family there?
Yes, we do. It would be my father's first cousins are the closest living relatives that I still have in Ischia. And it's wonderful to have that connection. It was like discovering a hidden treasure, because I really had no contact with them. And the biggest reason why, when I was growing up, is the language. On Ischia, most of the tourists are German. So my family on Ischia, if they speak another language, which of course Europeans do, it's German, not English. And I only had one uncle here in the United States he didn't even speak Italian. He spoke the dialect. And so once we made that first trip in 2001 with my dad and my uncle, I realized that chain was going to be broken if somebody didn't learn the language. So I nominated myself and learned to speak Italian, the proper Italian, not the dialect. That still confuses me. And that has really opened doors by knowing the language, being able to communicate with them, and also discovering my husband's family, because they live in a really small dot on the map town that hardly anybody speaks English.
Really? The German connection, that's so interesting, because obviously you think the North, you're going to have the Germans and the Austrians, because that was part of the Austrian Empire and everything. But I would have never thought Ischia. But I guess it's a resorty type of place, and they want to get out of the cold.
Yeah, right. And it's the big draw are the thermal spas that are all around Ischia. And since it is volcanic, you can go hiking up to the peak of Mount Epomeo. And so the German tourists tend to love to go to the spas to relax, and then they'll go hiking and the good food and all that.
That's neat. That's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. That's
Yeah.
really, really cool. So let's talk about the book, because you have 7 keys to redeeming your heritage or your family. So
That's right.
why don't we go through the 7 keys so we
Sure.
can let people an idea?
Absolutely. And each of the 7 keys, each chapter is one of the keys. And each of the 7 keys have the 3 C's: connect, create, and continue. Because I'm encouraging people to connect to their heritage. And even though you and I are Italian Americans, it can be any heritage. So whether they're Mexican or Mandalorian, whatever it is, they can connect to their heritage. Or maybe someone married into a culture that's different than theirs, or they did that DNA test and they suddenly found out that they have some type of heritage. So I encourage people to connect to their heritage and then to create a dolce vita by using that, whatever that is, that topic, included in their daily lives. And then the third C, the continue, is to continue the legacy for the future. And because so many of us say, oh, my kids or my grandkids, they don't have an interest in our heritage, or like you and I were talking earlier, how some of the younger generations, they don't even know about things like an onomastico, which is your name day. Like my dad, he was Joseph. So St. Joseph's Day was a big deal around our house. Not only is that the Father's Day in Italy, but it was my dad's 2nd birthday. So the 7 keys, and the way that I organized it, is the easiest to do to the more involved. Not necessarily the more difficult, but the more involved. So the A number 1, food, glorious food. In Italian food, it has been known to be the best in the world, of course. We might be a little biased, but it is. So we can, for example, we can connect to our heritage through food by going to an authentic Italian restaurant, dusting off one of grandma's old recipes. We can create our richer life, our more meaningful life, by use those recipes. And then how do we continue our culture and our heritage with the next generation? Well, maybe you could do something like, with the holidays coming up, you're going to ask the younger generation to help you plan a meal, the dinner meal, or something like I did. I took a cooking class, a pasta making class with my 3 great nieces. Now you might say, oh, well, yeah, that's a great idea. Well, we had the extra challenge of 1 lives in Florida, 2 live in the Carolinas, and I live in Rhode Island. So what we did is we did a Zoom cooking class with a real live, authentic nonna, grandma in Italy. And so we had these 4 Zooms going on at the same time, making pasta together. It was awesome. So food is the first one. The second key is holidays and traditions, things like onomastico. The third key is language. And I'm not expecting people to say that they have to be fluent. Oops, I lost one of my earbuds there. You don't have to be fluent, but even just learning simple traveler phrases for language, and that will help you connect. The fourth key is film and music, whether you're playing music in the background or you're seeing Italian films, or even films that are filmed in Italy. Or, for example, I know some of the James Bond movies, the Mission Impossible movies. There are a lot of movies. Of course, Eat, Pray, Love, the Eat part is filmed in Italy. So you can get those feels. That's the fourth one. The fifth one is genealogy. And of course, obviously, there's a connection. Genealogy, where we're discovering our family stories, our family trees. And this brings me, I forgot to mention this about each chapter. Each chapter has the 3 keys, the 3 C's rather: connect, create, and continue. But each chapter also has something that I call over the top. It's somebody that took that key and went above and beyond the extra mile with that topic. And for example, travel, the next key, my friends Gary and Eileen Modica from Our Italian Journey. For genealogy, the person that's over the top would be right here, Bob Sorrentino, with Italian roots and genealogy. And I was just saying how, for those of you that don't know, he's traced his genealogy back 1,000 years. That's impressive. So again, the 6th key is travel. And that can be anything from, it could be simply traveling from your chair, your armchair, where you're watching a video about your hometown or where your ancestors came from. And then the 7th key is association, where you're going to get together with people that share your passion for your culture. And the biggest thing about that, I feel that these days, we are so connected because of technology. We can find out about things happening around the world in seconds. However, I think that we're really becoming more disconnected emotionally and with personal relationships. So part of this is about getting together with like-minded people and creating those associations because it helps us. We feel more connected, that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, and we are. And speaking of associations and connections, there's one big reason, there's three big reasons I wrote the book, but the biggest one is this. Do you know that children that have a strong knowledge of their family story, their family history, they are going to do better in school and have a greater self-confidence? Who wouldn't want that for their kids? And even adults that are connected to something like that, they are happier and healthier. So redeeming your roots is not just about following your who married who and had children. It's about creating a richer life today.
And that's really interesting point about the connection with the kids and all of that, because I see it in the club that I joined. And like I said, when we were talking in the pre-interview, that I wish I didn't wait so long, but a lot of the grandchildren of some of the members, they're 4-year high school Italian students. So, they understand the language, they're conversing in it, which is really, really neat. I wish they had taught us when we were younger. My generation, they were trying to speak more English because, they had to get through. And my parents spoke, but they didn't teach us. So we just knew, Ashpet and things like.
And the swear words.
Yes, and the swear words. When they didn't want us to know something, they would speak in Italian, right?
Right, exactly. Whether it was they were arguing or they were talking about Christmas presents. Yep.
So I think it was the holiday one I read in the book, and I'm going to have you tell the story about the ham, because I think it's just so hysterical.
Yeah, it's a good story and this is in the chapter about holidays and traditions. And it's a story about a gentleman that's watching his wife make a ham. So she has it on the counter on the cutting board, and she cuts off one end, cuts off the other end, and then puts it in the pan and throws it in the oven. And so he scratches his head and says, but honey, why do you cut the ends off of the ham? She said, well, my mother taught me how to cook a ham like that. That's how I do it. You'll have to ask her. So he calls his mother-in-law and explains this, why, your wife, your daughter told me that you cut the hands off of each end off the ham before you cook it. Why? Does it make it taste better or something? She said, well, that's how my mother taught me, and that's just how we do it. You'll have to ask her. Now, luckily, Grandma's still around. So he calls his wife's grandmother and explains the story about this mysterious cooking technique about cutting the ends off of the ham. Well, she thought that was hysterical. And she laughed and she said, honey, my pan is too small. So sometimes we might have a tradition that we think is very profound, when really it's something as simple as that. But no matter what, whether it's something silly or something deep and profound and meaningful, it's so important to carry on these traditions. And things like that gives us an opportunity to talk about them, to talk about our grandparents or our aunts and uncles. And I feel that we need to do that as a way of honoring them, not just remembering them, but honoring them. We live pretty cushy lives, especially compared to what they went through. And just think about the sacrifices that they made so you and I can be where we are today. So as we keep their story and their memory alive and we pass it on to the next generation, that's a way of honoring those sacrifices.
Well, yeah, and that's a good point. I remember my mother's sister, older sister, saying at Christmas they got an orange, and that was a big deal.
That's
to get
right.
An orange.
That's right.
And my mom, her sister, her oldest sister, I guess was maybe 15 years older than her or something like that. My mother never got a doll to play with until her sister actually went to work.
Wow. I believe it.
Yeah. So, we're talking, I guess 1933, 34, somewhere around that,
right.
but people don't realize that, we've come a long way, and that wasn't easy
That's right.
for them. And I think that's why we had so much food, because they didn't have it before, until the children started to work. That's when they started having being able to do the food. But, I know in the book you had some do's and don'ts about food. And I'll tell you, a couple of two funny stories about food in Italy. My daughter thought she was going to have the best fettuccine Alfredo that she ever ate in Italy. And I had to break the news to her that it doesn't exist here.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, chicken parm and veal parm do not exist. Eggplant parmesan does, but not chicken or veal. Yeah, it's or Caesar salad. I mean, these are things that don't exist.
Yeah, my cousin made us real eggplant parmesan when we were there. The other one was, my wife didn't tell me this until she tested it out at the restaurant. She asked for cheese on the fish dish.
That's un peccato, a sin.
The guy was like, no cheese, no cheese.
I love it. I love it. That sounds just like them.
And he just refused to bring it. I mean, that was the end of
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if you're the paying customer or not. You just do not do that. I love
No,
it.
there's no cheese. I said, did you know? She says, yeah, I wanted to see what they were going to do.
Good. I'm glad you did. That's fun. I love it.
But cappuccino in the big cities, they serve it but after 11 because they figure the Americanos are there when they want cappuccino.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you do order a cappuccino after noon or 11 a.m. and anywhere in Italy, they will serve it to you because you're the paying customer, but they will go snicker at you in the back when they're making it. And they'll say Americano.
Yeah. Like I said, in the real touristy places, I don't think they care that much.
No, they don't.
The best coffee I ever had was in Naples.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Italy, anywhere in the world, that was the best coffee. And to your point about the languages and stuff like that, by the end of the week, I could converse with the guy in because I used to go to the same place every morning.
Yeah.
And so we got by the end of the week.
Exactly.
But I'm trying to learn. I'm trying my best to learn. I use Duolingo a little bit, and the club. To your point about joining these clubs, we have a free class on Saturday mornings. So,
Beautiful.
we have a teacher come in. She comes like every other week, and then the days when she's not there, we all bought the same book, Italian stories. Easy Italian stories. So we'll read through it, and there are a couple of guys who are pretty fluent, so they'll help us with the pronunciation and the translation and things like that. But to your point, you feel you feel more connected to the culture, even just doing that.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's amazing how the language does tie you in so closely. And especially if you grew up hearing the Italian, it takes you back. It's a reminiscence as well and a memory to hear that and to speak the language. And there are a lot of people, do get together. If you can get together in person, of course, it's always better. And I have an Italian group that when I lived in New Hampshire, we would meet at the library. And then I moved away. So a 2-hour drive to go to Italian conversation didn't work out. But here's a silver lining to 2020 when everything was shut down. That Italian group, they went online. And we are still today. So now I can join them. And even today, later on this afternoon, I'm going to be part of my Italian conversation group with the Bedford Italian Cultural Society in New Hampshire. So we can connect with people. And a language is like a muscle. If we don't use our muscles, they atrophy. And the same thing with the language. And it could be something as simple as you're sitting in a traffic light and you're going to see the numbers on the license plate in front of you. Say them out loud. Say those numbers in Italian out loud. Or you're thinking about your things you have to do today. Try to say it in your head in Italian of the things you have to do or the things you have to go. Use it or you'll lose it.
Well, and I like the thing that you put in the book about you used to put stickers on all the stuff in the kitchen and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I had little tiny sticky notes. And so it would say frigorifero on the fridge and it would say cafe on the coffee pot. And the one on the dog kept falling off though. So.
Well, and like they say you don't worry too much about the verb tenses and things like that. What I find that the toughest, and I'm catching on it, there's two things, is when you're pronouncing the vowels, the sounds don't change in Italian
Right.
like they do here.
That's
So
correct.
that's something that, the American kicks in every now and then. And the other
Right.
one is, just two others. One is when you have the double L or double R or things like that, you pronounce both.
Right. You hold it. Yep.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right. And then, what was the other one? Same thing with the vowels. You pronounce every single vowel.
That is correct. That's right. That's right. Yep. Yes. Yeah. And so it is different for our English speaking brains to get used to that. But having said that, Italian is easier to read out loud because it stays the same.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point. And that's, like I said, that's why we all bought that book, and we all read. And like I said,
Right.
the more fluent Italian speakers will correct us and things like that.
Right.
But, growing up, you mentioned growing up, I thought I was hearing Italian growing up, and I wasn't. I was hearing Barese.
That's right. That's right. And that's why I know sometimes people say, because I was the same as you, where my grandparents, they wanted to be American. So they spoke English to each other unless they were having an argument or wanted to keep something secret. However, and my dad and my uncle, they grew up that their native language was Italian. However, it was not Italian. It was the Neapolitan dialect that I still don't understand. But so people say, oh, it's too bad your parents or your grandparents didn't teach you Italian when you were growing up. No, this is actually a blessing because I would have been learning a dialect. I still would have had to learn Italian. And so I'm glad I didn't have anything to mess up my brain with what I thought was Italian. So now, and knowing Italian rather than just the dialect, we can travel anywhere in Italy and talk to anybody knowing Italian.
Right. And it's Scorpion has a little statement here. The CH sound, the sound.
Yes, that's right. Right. Like especially when you have a word that once you get it pluralized, the CH keeps it a hard C sound or a hard K sound.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. I was getting transferred to England, so my English boss came to. He was in New York, and he said, "The wife works in Manhattan, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'll meet you for dinner. You want to go to dinner? We'll meet for dinner, and where do you want to go?" I said, "Well, we could go to Little Italy." So he said, "Oh, okay, that's good." So we get in the restaurant, and he ordered the ganache.
I love it. I love it, ganache.
And of course, I couldn't say anything because he was my new English boss, and
Right.
I used
Exactly.
to I used to have language fights with them all the time. They used to call a fillet, like a filet mignon. They used to
Yep.
call it fillet steak.
Fill it.
And I said,
Right.
"Where do you get fillet from?" And they said, "Well, that's the way you pronounce it, and the French and all." I said, "Well, how do you pronounce VALET?" They said, "Valet." I said, "It's the same thing."
There you go. That's funny.
Lord,
Okay. Yes, I can answer this question. It is still alive and well. It is getting the dialect, in case people are listening and not reading, the question is not sure if you guys can answer. How common is dialect in Italy now? Everywhere you go, the dialect is still very strong, especially in southern Italy. Now, as more and more different nationalities move into Italy, just like every other country in the world, of course, the dialects are becoming more diminished. However, the dialect is not just by the way, it's not an accent. It's a totally different language. Like there's a Sicilian Italian dictionary. That's how different a dialect is. And it's not just a language. It's a sense of pride for the Italian people. It's one of the ways that they hold on to their heritage, their unique corner of the world. So for my family speaking the Neapolitan dialect, they will speak that all the time because it shows, well, it's kind of like, let's say you go to you're a fan of a particular baseball team and you go to one of their games that's not in their home stadium. But you see other t-shirts that the same logo that you're wearing. You have an instant bond with that person, even though you don't even know who each other is. Same thing with the dialect. they start speaking their dialect or they hear their dialect spoken by somebody else, instant community that, yes, these are my paisans. So it is very alive and well, although it is diminishing.
Yeah, and my experience with the dialects over there was too. The first trip we were in Calabria, and they were singing this song, "Eat the goat, I'm on your crop." That's the way they said "eat the goat," and it's three chords. So I asked them to send me the chords. I figured out the chords on the guitar. So asked them if they could send me the lyrics. That was like no language I ever saw in my life. It was certainly wasn't Italian, that's for sure.
Right.
And then the last trip, when we were in to my mom's family's home in Torito, our driver was Barese, and I asked him, I said, "Can you say some things in Barese and then say it in Italian?" And completely, it was completely different, completely
Yeah.
different.
Yes.
So I always tell people that if you're going to Italy and you know where you come from, you have to go there. So what's your advice to people who are not sure if they want to go down because they don't know anybody, it's a small
Right.
town or whatever?
Absolutely. I agree with you 110. It is, especially if you are of Italian heritage, and it might be difficult to find where did your family come from, but you can do the research. It took me a while to find my husband's family, but we finally did. And it's so important to go. You can't explain it. You have to experience it. Or it's like that movie Rudy, when the father stepped into the stadium at Notre Dame. This is like my life's dream. And it's true, when you go to the roots of where your family came from, even if you don't know any relatives there, there's just something inside of you that says you're home. And again, it goes back to honoring our relatives, our ancestors, by going home, wherever that is. And some things that you can do once you do find out where your family comes from. And you can do that through genealogical research. Talk to Bob about that. That's his expertise. There are a couple of things you can do. Number one, you can always do it the easy way. Look on YouTube. Look up videos for whatever area that your family comes from. Like my husband's family, I'm not going to find something on San Michele in Teverina, but I can find something for Umbria or the mountains of Lazio. That I can find. Then there are organizations that will help you connect with that town. A friend of mine, Mirella at Southern Italy Travels, that's what she and her brother do. They help connect you with and I don't get a kickback. I should, but I don't get a kickback. But anyway, she will connect you. I get a kickback in friendship, which is worth more than money. So anyway, she can connect you with where your town is, where your family's town is. In some cases, she can even arrange it that you meet the mayor of that town. Now, one thing that we did with my husband's family, we could not find anybody, at least through the Italian white pages, Pagine Bianche, we only found 3 people. And when we just showed up, we just went to the town, made a reservation at a hotel, which was actually a castle. And that's another story. And the owner of the castle called those 3 people, and every one of them said, "No, we don't have any family in America." But hey, we were there. We found the cemetery. We found his great-great-grandfather's grave, et cetera, et cetera. But what ended up happening is that we were we went and we cleaned up the grave. We put flowers there and everything else. And before we left town, we went to the cemetery to pay our respects before we said goodbye. And this guy comes up to us, and in Italian, he said, who are you and why are you at this grave? And I explained that Francesco, way at the top there, or actually Donato, way at the top, was my husband's great-great-grandfather. Well, come to find out, we were related. And so he said, "Oh, well, that man is my father's cousin," or whatever it was. And so he took us around the graveyard, introducing us to his family. And come to find out, he was one of those 3 from the white pages. It's just he didn't know he had family in America, but we found him. And now we're all good friends. We get together every time we go. We send Christmas cards and all that. And we have another friend, that same town, that he just showed up and he brought pictures. And that was genius. It's old pictures. And he just went around town and said, "Do you know these people? Do you know these people?" And sure enough, somebody knew somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody. and they were able to connect that way. So just go.
Well, yeah, and there are no accidents.
No,
There's
no.
no accidents. I've heard so many stories with people that I interviewed. I mean, one of the latest ones was just so amazing, where they had given up. They were looking for people with the name of Napolitano, and they had given up, and they getting a drink of water, leaving the town. The garbage men pulled up, and they asked the one person's cousin who lived in Italy, who are they? And she said, "Oh, we're looking for them, but we can't find it. Follow us." He took them to the house.
I love it.
And the same thing with with the photos and stuff like that. When I met my dad's cousins, they had my parents' wedding photo from
Right.
1944 that my
Yes.
grandmother had sent.
Yes. Yes.
It's just incredible. I mean, I'm a firm believer in that they want to be found.
Yes.
And that's the whole point of your book, right?
That's right.
They want to be found.
They do. They really do. And think about it. And I know sometimes people say, well, isn't that kind of weird just showing up? Oh, well, yeah, it is a little weird, but so what? It's beautiful that you are reaching out. You're connecting. You want to connect to them, with them. And I do find that the Italians in general tend to be very warm, open, friendly people in the first place. So even if you're not related, but if they find out that you're even related, distant cousins, they don't care. Your family. They will celebrate and join with you. They'll be happy that you found them. So absolutely don't be afraid to do it. And as far as the language, today with technology, you've got a translator right on your phone. So you don't even have to worry about that.
Yeah, and when I started this, I was using Facebook and my cousin Cinzia, who's the fourth cousin actually, but she had no idea she had anybody in America. She was looking for people in maybe Spain or South America, because Pure Malo originally came from Spain. And she found me, and we were able, we realized, and that's the one who set up a lot of things for us over there. But when I went to my dad's cousins, I didn't know where I was going. I knew that Nicola was my dad's half first cousin, but he didn't say where he was taking us. And so as soon as I walked into the apartment, one of the women, there were 3 women there in the 90s, one of them resembled my grandmother a lot. And as soon as we walked in the door, it was like we knew each other forever. Like like they were my grandparents or great aunts or something like that.
Exactly.
And like you said before, you can't explain it to people what that's like unless they do it. And I've heard people just walking down the street and they see you look like so and so. They'll tell them, "Oh, that's my uncle, my grandfather, my great whatever."
Exactly. Right.
And it's so exciting.
Yes.
To me, anyway. My wife, not so much, but I did take it to Shaka, her hometown.
I love it.
But she's half Italian and half Puerto Rican. And I guess she was, although her mother was Italian, her family, she was more connected with the Puerto Rican side. So I think she felt like that when she went to Puerto Rico a little bit, although she didn't tell me. She did. And yeah, the one good thing about knowing at least a little Italian, you could usually read the menus, if nothing else.
That's right. That's right.
And point to things. So before we go, Mary has a question that I was going to ask. So,
okay.
Where can the book be purchased?
Excellent. I'm glad you asked that. For the ebook is exclusive to Amazon. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free with Kindle Unlimited. The hardcover and softcover books are available anywhere books are sold. So, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I really encourage you to go to your local mom and pop bookstore though. But yes, the print versions are available everywhere.
Right. And people could also find you online too, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm on Facebook. It's under Dawn Matera, author and speaker. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok, believe it or not. No one's more surprised than me. LinkedIn. And my website is yourdolcevita.com.
And so for anybody who's interested, because like I said, I'm doing the cultural thing now. So what kind of, when you do speaking engagements, what do you talk about?
Yeah, I have a couple of keynote speeches that I do. There are 3 areas that I focus on. And my target market, as far as demographics, are people over 50. And so I have 3 areas called lead, live, and yeah, me too, way over 50. I can do I can do over 60 these days. Lead, live, and legacy. Leading is for my corporate and nonprofit organizations where I talk about resilience and retention in the workplace, as well as generational diversity. Living is all about la dolce vita. And so one of my keynotes is 5 keys to a dolce vita in your 50s and beyond. And then the legacy part is directly related to the newest book, Redeem Your Roots. And that's where I talk about, now, obviously, I'm not going to do a keynote of all 7 keys to connect and create and continue, but I'll highlight 3 of the 7 keys in that speech.
So that's, I didn't realize that you did all 3. Well, I guess that the new one is geared more towards art. And I guess that, that could apply to any nationality, right? It doesn't have to be specific to Italian.
That is absolutely correct. And in the book, I even talk about that, it doesn't matter whether I just have an Italian bent to it because that's what I know. But any of the principles that I talk about in the book, it doesn't matter. So, again, whether someone married into a culture or they did a DNA test and suddenly found out they're Scottish or whatever, they can use the same 7 keys to connect to their roots and redeem their roots.
I find it fascinating that not so much anymore, but several years ago when a lot of people were just starting to do the DNA, coming back and finding out they were Greek or they were, something else. And like, I'm 100% Italian. And I tried to explain to them, I said, there's culture and there's science. Your culture, of course, is Italian. If your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, everybody was born there, of course, that's your culture. But your DNA, where you originally came from, Italy was, that really was a melting pot, right?
Absolutely, it was. I mean, you think about it, it was mostly Roman forever. And then you look at throughout the centuries, rather, where Italy had been conquered and taken over by almost every people group, whether it was Greeks or different groups. So yeah, has been a melting pot.
Well, yeah, and I did the living DNA, and they give you your maternal and paternal lines. And I was blown away. My mother's maternal line goes back almost 100% to the Caucasus. There's no Italian in there, no Slavic, no Greek, no nothing. I was thrown away. My father was kind of mountain type of people, and today there are some people in like the mountains of Switzerland, parts of Spain, Sardinia, places like that. But yeah, my mother's line, that I was shocked. To see that. But like I said, there's culture and there's science. And of course,
right. Yep.
Cultures are the best culture in the world, Italians. I mean, I might be a little,
that's right.
And the best food. I might be a little biased, but
no, but we're right.
Well, this has been great, Dawn. I really appreciate it. And, hopefully a lot of people buy the book and learn how to connect back to their culture.
That's the goal. Yes. Helping people reconnect, discover or rediscover their roots. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Ciao, everybody.